won't end up in the court again. Give you an example is a lot of times a judge wants a person coming to the courtroom, a young person may not have a high school diploma. Part of their condition of release or probation is to get a high school diploma. If a person with cognitive impairments has a certificate of completion, high school diploma or a GED would be very, very difficult. Particularly a GED would be very, very difficult. Judges won't know that by this person just walking in. Some judges do, like that's why I invited Judge Thomas, because she knows he's a member of ARC, and Attorney Robin, they would know. But most of the people in the legal, most of the people in the legal profession would know, and kind of like setting a person who's cognitive impairment to get a GED when he's been in a category classroom all his life, setting him up for failure. Then with that, that failure may be looked upon as defiance or uncompliant with the court, and they may end up with longer probation or even incarceration. Also, this is also what we look at is when they get in contact with police. Initially on the street or something, if someone calls police or they get in trouble, how they react to the police and how would the police know this person has a disability. Give an example, in Inkster, this guy with autism got, not Inkster, it was Westland, and got in contact with police, and they ended up hitting him in the eye and messing up his eye permanently. And he can't see out his left eye for the rest of his life because of his encounter with police. But this person was, we would say, he was noticeably had a disability. But obviously the police didn't, or whoever did this didn't notice his disability, and they looked at him as in an act of compliance or non-compliance and defiance and whatever, and that's what happened. So that's, and trying to prevent that from happening in the first place. So recognizing, you know, in the first place. Let's get another example. Sometimes people with autism, even adults with autism, have meltdowns, and might be looked at as a mental health crisis. And I have a term, I don't want a mental health crisis to turn into a crime scene. So when you call police, person might be having a meltdown, but when the police shows up, it's a crime scene. In some states, they have what they call a mental health van, where a social worker or mental health professional goes out to the house instead of police. That's in Oregon, and kind of, you know, I kind of wish that could happen here, but that's further down the line. But so I'd like to first introduce Attorney Robin McCoy. She's been working with us for quite a while. We also work with in a group called Rethink Discipline. That's with a group of people at the ACLU and some more people that's helping kids not being suspended from school. That's another story, because expelled and suspended from school, because kids with disability are disproportionately expelled and suspended from school, but that's another issue for another day. But that's where I know Attorney Robin McCoy from. And I'd like to thank you for coming and being a part of this. And I'd like you to give your thoughts to the group.
Yes, okay, thank you, Lauren. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be joined by joined by Judge Deborah Thomas, who is my mentor. So I am a practicing attorney. I've been practicing 19 years, and I specialize in criminal defense. I do educational advocacy, and I do family law. And as a part of my educational advocacy, so I help parents and other advocates with getting children assessed for disabilities and making sure that they're getting the proper supports that they need in the school system. And I also, as Lauren indicated, like I represent kids, like if they get suspended or expelled. I do general ed, but I was trained under Judy New. I don't know if any of you know Judy New, who is with the Michigan Children's Law Center. Her specialization is special ed. So we did that 2.5 years is special ed, just making sure that kids are getting all the supports that they need. And so I left the Michigan Children's Law Center at the end of December, but I've continued on with the educational advocacy. And I'm pleased to report I have one child that, so I was representing him on a delinquency case, but it was a mix. So I do mixed cases, and he was having a lot of problems, and I had to fight with the schools to get him the right testing, but we just got him a specialist that assessed him, and he was diagnosed with severe dyslexia and dyscalculia and ADHD. And I have another young child that I'm working with, who is actually in the same school district, who's having some issues, and we're just trying to make sure that they get the right supports. And I also do, Judge Thomas recruited me to do expungement work, and so I do expungement videos, and I put my link in there. But I also do videos on educational advocacy, helping parents and advocates. Yeah, expungement is helping a person if they're a child or an adult and they get a criminal record and they want to try to get their record set aside. That's what an expungement is. They have to meet certain criteria. So I put my website is in there, and I have some videos in there where I go into more detail about expungement. I also do videos about educational advocacy, so helping parents to understand the process. Because I just met with a parent yesterday and said that there were some parents being bullied in the Lincoln Consolidated School District, and so we're trying to make sure that they're getting resources for their children with disabilities. And then I also do videos on what to do when stopped by the police. And I just did a recent video, and in the video, I do the videos. I started them because I was looking at what was happening with Black folk, but my friends at the Michigan Indian Legal Services, they sponsored me to come in and talk about what's happening in the Native American community. And as I've done the research on this, the disabled community, there are several. I've had cases, I've seen cases of people, as I do the research, people who are disabled, their family members want help, maybe they're having a mental breakdown. They want help from the police. They call the police, and the family member ends up dead or criminally charged. And so one thing I would say as an attorney, as an advocate, what I do as a part of my screening, I very much try to make sure, and it's important that you as the audience, whether it's like family members or if you get in trouble yourself, making sure that information is conveyed to the authorities and to your lawyer. Because when I get that information, and so I'm in there with some of those judges, some of the judges are short-tempered, not Judge Thomas, but when they have a client that they feel like, oh, you don't understand. I'm like, well, Your Honor, this client has autism or ADHD, so it's not, I've had to explain to some of the judges, they have, they are not intentionally trying to be rude or inappropriate. They have a disability, and we need to accommodate the disability. I know in Michigan they say if you have a disability, you're supposed to get services until you're 26, which I think is ridiculous, because if you got a disability, you got a disability for life. So I don't even know where, that's a whole nother topic of discussion. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, happy to answer any questions, and thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so at the ARC we do both. We do children advocacy and special education, and our new program with adults that we're starting in the past couple of years, unofficially. I get enough from Judge Thomas, which is kind of scary to keep me busy. So that's just one judge, and I'm kind of frightened that by opening it up to other judges, I'll be kind of overwhelmed about how many people that was IDD that are in the criminal justice system, either incarcerated or on probation or on parole or whatever. So that's part of what we do, because the process, well, I'll let her explain the process. But what I do is I try to find some supports for them. Like they have, in this, people are, why can't they go to Drew, or why can't they go to this long-term education center up to the age 26. But Drew is a MOCI program. That means you have to be moderately cognitively impaired to attend Drew to age 26. But if you're in a MICI program, that's mildly cognitively impaired, to go by your full scale IQ, Drew will not be offered. So when you get out of high school with your certificate of completion, you're mildly cognitively impaired, you don't have a high school diploma. So there's not a lot. You can't go to Drew because you don't qualify. You don't have a high school diploma. So what can you do? What services are out there for a person who's mildly cognitively impaired?
How is the cognitive impairment determined?
They're determined by IQ tests. Okay, for schools to be considered cognitively impaired, mildly cognitively impaired, you have to have an IQ of like 55 to 70. MOCI, moderately cognitively impaired, is under 55 and to whatever number, and after that is severely cognitively impaired. I don't know the numbers offhand. But to be classified as cognitively impaired for school purposes is full scale IQ of 70. So if you have a full scale IQ of 68, you might be or 59, you've been in a MICI program with mildly cognitively impaired. It might be the MICI classroom. That is a classroom with just kids that are MICI. There might be from 5 to 12 kids in the classroom. They don't get a high school diploma. They get a certificate of completion, which allows them to get education up to their age 26. But there's no place for a kid with mild cognitive impairment to get education at age 26.
Lauren.
What happens,
Lauren,
I don't get in touch. I don't see these kids. I usually, when they call me in, there's usually a kid with MOCI. But the MICI kids, they seem to fall through the cracks. And I don't see them again until they're in the criminal justice system, where there may be like 19, 20 by this time.
Lauren, could I interrupt, please?
Go ahead.
Okay, please, Marguerite, our signer has arrived.
Oh,
So
good.
if anyone else needs to have the ASL service, please check Matthew Butler.
There we go.
Now, I have a question for you, Lauren.
Oh.
If they're not at Drew, do they go to places like Jerry L. White and those other special education centers? Where do they go if they're mildly?
All special education centers like Drew, Jerry L. White, Bent's on East Side are all MOCI programs. That means they have to be moderately cognitively impaired.
So if they're if they are mildly cognitively impaired, where do they go to school? They
don't. There's no place for them. That was my issue. Because DPS was starting a program. They were telling me they were starting a program, but they had to train and transition of leadership, and I guess that program fell through the cracks.
Did you speak, I'm sorry to interrupt, but did you talk to Miss Nzoma? Because that was one of my contacts over there when I was working over there. And I've been to Drew, and I've seen the facilities at Drew, and I've had a client in the past at Jerry O. White.
Right.
I would say from my experience as a lawyer, if I have somebody who's past 26 who needs help, we would try to apply for Social Security disability and try to help them get support services and maybe do adult foster care. But that's just what I wanted to add. I apologize for interrupting, Ms. Franco. I think you had something further to say.
I did, because it's the law that young people until they're 26 have to go to school. So I would like to speak to Ms. Nzoma to find out where they are. She's the executive director, executive director of exceptional student services.
I know, they change it. It's like they change it every year.
I think that's because she also is responsible for gifted and talented.
Right.
Who are exceptional students as well.
She was,
somebody else
she was,
wanted to ask. Okay, stop. Will, you had something you wanted to say?
So for Attorney Robin McCoy, so what restorative justice practices do you use or are you familiar with to help people with disabilities get off like sort of the criminalization and try to dismantle them from the school to prison pipeline?
Okay, so with my work that I did, I worked at the Michigan Children's Law Center for about 12 and a half years, and I was a lawyer guardian ad litem and a delinquency attorney, and more recently an educational advocate. So when we go into certain schools, so we'll get a call for a child, and we were doing outside children, and when I first started, we lost some funding, but when I get called in, I would actually ask the school, do you have a restorative circle? So some of the schools that I went into actually had restorative circles, and I would participate. I would be a part of that. Some of the schools, at my suggestion or strong urging, would put together a restorative circle. And so so I have participated in those situations, and we have, I've been actually helping to support. It's important, like we've had these prosecutorial races. So I've had conversations with Kim Worthy and Ellie Savitt, who is the incoming prosecutor in Washtenaw County, and Karen McDonald, who is running in Oakland County, because I feel it's very important that they do these restorative circles. So what I am encouraging people to do, I don't know if you've heard of Earlene Baguette Hayes, is a mediator, and she is kind of she does it like the restorative kind of work as well. I really promote that more so than what I see, because for me,
can you describe what a restorative circle is?
Okay, so a restorative circle is typically, as I've experienced them, it's a situation where, well, I'll go with high school. So high school, some kids get into a fight. And the school will have it set up where, well, let's have the kids, and sometimes the kids' parents, it depends on the school how they do it. Let's have everybody sit down, and they'll have a social worker and a therapist sometimes, and let's see what are the problems. Let's talk about the problems. Let's squash it. Let's work out the problems so that they don't keep coming back, and we keep getting calls either at the juvenile court or the educational advocacy unit. And I had a lot of them where they were on social media. Kids are doing stuff on social media, so the teachers aren't always privy to all of that. And so a circle is where we sit in the circle, we talk about the issues, and everybody, you have to pretty much have the consent of everybody, like the alleged perpetrator and the victim, that they agree that they're going to talk this out, that they're going to work this out, and it's short of them calling the police to come in, and the prosecutor, because typically the police, the prosecutor, they tend to be more punitive. And when you have it, whether it's a child or an adult, if they come in and they get a record, not every record can be set aside or expunged. So that's where, because Kim Worthy, Victoria Burton Harris was running against her, and Kim Worthy said she was doing more restorative work with the children. And I sent her email, I pressed her, I said, it should be done with the adults. And Judge Thomas, when she gets on here, she's going to tell you too. She's done a lot, like Veterans Court, other programming, but she has been very much advocating restorative circles, restorative justice. There's a lot of cases, I represent a lot of adults. There are a lot of cases that if you had somebody trained in restorative justice, or a therapist, mediator to come in, have the parties sit down, you can have a better result, because there's some cases people, I want them to go to jail, or I want restitution. It's a more holistic way of dealing with things. In Washtenaw County, we have Judge Timothy Connors, who has worked a lot in Native American in the community, and he has the peacemaking court, and they use that model on their cases, like family law cases, and they have in Washtenaw County, they have the Dispute Resolution Center also, where they resolve conflicts, and they actually train children and adults on how to resolve conflicts. And it's just, to me, it's a more holistic way, as opposed to like what I see, where I see somebody who has all these charges, and and we're trying to get the record cleared, and the current law is 1 felony, 2 misdemeanors, so they're not eligible. And some of the prosecutors and the judges look at them as like bad news, and basically that they can't be redeemed, which is I think is wrong. I think most people can be redeemed.
Will, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and part of the reason why I'm like very familiar with this because I recently got my undergraduate degree in conflict analysis and dispute resolution, and like I spoke to a undergrad and grad combined restorative justice course at Salisbury University, and surprisingly, the administration out there at this university wants to actually cut the restorative justice course, even though it is one of the most needed courses during this time in our country, and there needs to be more restorative justice community courses available because not everybody is knowledgeable about restorative justice and peacekeeping, and especially like I know in states throughout the country, like there are like mediator programs which people can go and volunteer and get trained in 50 hours, and they're not really advertised that well at all, unfortunately, and about the importance of mediators.
Yeah, well, Will, I don't know if you put your information in the chat. I would like to talk to you more about what you know about the restorative process as well, because we're
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I put it in. Yep.
Okay, I'll make sure to take that down. Thank
And
you.
the judge has arrived.
Yes, I finished the docket.
Yay!
Welcome.
Yes, Judge Deborah Thomas. She's been a member of the ARC for a long time. She is one of the founders of the Disability Caucus. She's a tireless advocate for people with disabilities. She has a long history of winning for people with disabilities. I always like to toot her horn for her because she doesn't toot her horn for herself. She did a case some time ago with the airlines. They didn't want to accommodate people with disabilities on air flights. She took that case and she got it together and she won. And people with disabilities can fly with accommodations on airlines now. And without that, I don't understand, without an airline, I want to sell tickets. So I want everybody, I'm gonna make sure everybody can get on the plane. But she made sure that people with disabilities could ride comfortably on a plane just like the rest of the population can. That was my big issue with the whole, everything is, why can't everybody have the same opportunities everybody else get? If I want to ride a plane, if I want to bring somebody with me with disability, it should be just as comfortable as I am. Or if I want education, if I have a disability, I should be able to get that education. Or I want to walk down the street, I should be able to walk down the street without tripping over a curb or anything like that. So but she's here. And she's been working with the ARC, and she's the person who's kind of like, I'm getting people that need services as part of their probation or condition of release. And she identifies the people with IDD or other disabilities. And she sends them to me and we get to work. So, Judge Deborah Thomas.
Thank you. I present my information from 2 perspectives because I am a member of the disabilities community. I'm a polio survivor. I did attend white orthopedic school, and my education, my job training was made possible through vocational rehabilitative services as a member of the disabilities community. In the courthouse, I have the advantage, I will say, of often recognizing individuals who have cognitive impairment because of my life experience. I went to school with these folks, and I have a sensitivity to that issue. As an individual who is a member of the disabilities community, I appreciate and understand and recognize that oftentimes individuals who do not have disabilities that are visual, that can be readily seen, live life a little bit differently in terms of their efforts and success of more full integration into society as an able-bodied individual. In other contexts, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, that was known as passing in the Negro community. If you could pass, many individuals elected to do so. There are individuals in the disabilities community who, if they are able to pass, may elect to do so. And because of this mindset, oftentimes when they find themselves in court, if they are charged with an offense, they will not acknowledge or inform their attorney or the court that they have this disability. They may have spent years of their life passing, if you will, or in the alternative, because members of the disability community are always so encouraged to overcome barriers, to overcome discrimination, to overcome restrictions, it is part of the mindset that if I can achieve as much as possible without being faced with discrimination against those with disabilities, I'm going to take advantage of that. As a result, oftentimes I will have individuals who qualify for services who are not informing the court that they qualify for services because they are members of the disabilities community. Sometimes I'm able to glean that information from reading the pre-sentence report. In the pre-sentence report, it may indicate that they attended special education classes, or it may indicate that they are cognitively impaired. Sometimes I can glean that information because I take the time to have individual discussions with every individual that comes before me. I think if I'm going to sentence you, I should know something about you. I should try to glean what it is that I can do, if possible, towards rehabilitation. So I talk to the individuals. Sometimes individuals with disabilities, their parents are so accustomed to doing all of the talking for them, whether they need to or not, that I actually have to tell the parent, I'm not talking to you. All right, I don't want you to answer. And it is only at that time that I become aware in talking to the individual, the defendant themselves, that they are members of the disabilities community. I believe that as a group, we need to do more to sensitize judges, law enforcement, about some of the restrictions that individuals with cognitive impairment may have, to educate and sensitize that when faced with arrest or faced with a police situation, it is highly unlikely that that individual is going to say, I'm cognitively impaired. They probably have never said those words before in their life. So we as a community need to develop outreach programs where we carry information to the law enforcement agencies, to the prosecution offices, and even to the judges, so that we make appearances at the judges. We have bench meetings where all of the judges attend, or at least are invited to attend, and to make a presentation so that we can sensitize those individuals as to how they may be able to glean the information and what services are available to individuals up to the age of 25. What organizations are out there that can provide assistance And I think we need to encourage that stigma that we sometimes impose upon ourselves as well, that having a disability only makes you different, it doesn't make you less. And that there's nothing wrong with being different. Everyone's different in some way or another. And that we need to embrace that we may be different. That does not make us less. And everyone has a talent. And if we took more time to glean out the talent that everyone has, sometimes because we are different, we see things differently, so we portray them differently. But that may be a skill that's marketable, and that when individuals come in contact with the police or with the court, they may be more willing to indicate, I am different. That doesn't mean I am less. And that my differences should be recognized. And if there are assistances that need to enhance me as a total person, then I should be directed towards those programs and that assistance. Also, oftentimes individuals are brought into the criminal justice system because they're taken advantage of and are made the fall guy when there's group activity that's illegal. And because when you're a member of the disabilities community, oftentimes you are, those that you work with and come in contact with and are treated by are always good people, seeking to help. You get a distorted view of life. Everybody in life are not good people trying to help. Sometimes people are taken advantage of because basically you're just naive. You don't realize that there are people who are just going to take advantage of you because they can, for their benefit, because everybody you've met since you were 5 years old was trying to help you. And so they sometimes are victims themselves. And I think we need to advocate through the prosecution's offices that they need to look to see if the person who is being charged, the person who is being made the fall guy, the person who is being labeled as an aider and a abettor, actually may also be a victim. And these are the types of things that we as members of the disabilities community and friends of supporters of those in the disabilities community, we have to advocate for and we have to stand up for, because we're the only ones who are aware of how this plays out. So that's basically my presentation.
Thank you. That's a great point. That gives me just a segue to the guy in autistic person in Inkster that was hit in the eye by a police officer for robbing a store or something. He was put up to do that. This good person was moderately autistic. You know, if you met him, he was obviously autistic. Someone put him up to do that. Now, if I had $1 for every time I seen that happen, because a couple of the people that I got sent to by the judge were cognitively impaired, someone put them up to do it. Or they got into a car, they didn't know the car was stolen, please stop them. Everybody run except him. Because he's saying, why come everybody running? So he didn't run, who did the police take in? That person, the person who didn't run, because he didn't, it didn't register to run. Everybody else ran. And if I had $1 for every time if somebody got set up to put up to being taken advantage of, I'll be a rich man. But another issue I had with that person who does the setting up, I don't know if there's a charge that's aiding and abetting already, but that person who sets a person with a disability up should be charged with something else, because he's taking advantage of a incapacitated person, and that could be some kind of abuse or something.
Where that individuals can be charged for taking advantage of people who are senior citizens is where it's most often used.
Right.
But as members of the disabilities community, we may need to make more noise that it should not just be looked at in terms of senior citizens, but other individuals who have impairments that are also being taken advantage of.
Right. I've had that. I mean, as I said, I've been practicing 19 years and I've had several cases. I have cases now with clients that have been taken advantage of. I see Elaine has her hand raised. I think she has a question.
Yes. Well, first of all, this is Elaine Kolb, and Judge Thomas, you are amazing. I am so thankful that I have lived long enough to see someone like you in a position to do what you can do. And, you know, I'm, for those who can't see, I'm a fat old white person, ruddy white person, uses a power wheelchair. I've had my physical disability for almost 43 years. Before that, I was just weird. But to have you doing what you're doing, I wish every court would have some folks like you in it. That would make the difference, because the legal system is horrible, 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 horrible to anybody with any kind of disability. And just one among hundreds of examples I could give, but one that kind of stands out to me. I actually went to a funeral, and a man who has cerebral palsy went to the funeral, and he was dressed in a suit, and he had to use the bus to go. But he walked with difficulty. And he had a speech difficulty. So now he was standing at a bus stop. The police picked him up. They thought he was drunk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then didn't have the decency, when they finally figured out that he was just disabled, he wasn't really drunk. They didn't even have the decency to drive him home. He was lucky that he got back to a corner before the buses stopped running. So this is just one example of the horrible stuff that happens. And so everyone who does anything to make sure that people with disabilities, all different kinds of disabilities, have some justice, you know, we're in this together. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Will Freed here coming next. And like, I've been very disappointed, especially with COVID-19, with a lot of the rationing that's been going on towards people with disabilities on the medical side. Like, the fact is that, like, back in March, we had, with COVID-19, hospitals were not going to give equal access to treatment, and a bunch of disability organizations had to file reports within the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Civil Rights, and that's not okay. And then we have people, I mean, even after that, months later, I mean, we have Michael Hickson dying from COVID-19. After that, after the documents have already been sent and state hospitals are wide, it's just very hard. And Judge Thomas, like, the one thing too is, like, what as a disabled person myself, like, what should people say to, like, police or law enforcement to understand that we should not be like medical, like, I mean, rationalized, and make sure that they judge people equally, because that's important for us as a community.
I thought about that, of course. And I've wondered, because I don't have all the answers, but sometimes I wonder, there was a time when individuals would wear alert bracelets.
Yeah, I've seen them with they'd have an alert bracelet, or they carry a card that says that they have a disability, and it breaks it, like a little card that they have in their wallet, or a wristband or something like that.
And you know, there's always both sides to an argument. Some folks don't want to wear the bracelet because they don't see why they should have to identify. But I think that at least people should have the option, that they should be more readily available. I mean, if I wanted to go get a bracelet today, all right, that indicated that I was a polio survivor, so don't do certain things to me, please, where would I get the bracelet? And it seems like there should be some consistency in the bracelet so that it's readily recognized. You know, everybody got a different bracelet. They're not looking at all these bracelets to try to figure out what's on them. I thought about that. At one time, the state of Michigan issued cards if you were a member of the disabilities community, especially if you were covered by some of their special insurances, if injured on the job. And I kept my card for years. It probably just disintegrated. But I wonder if there could be a card that one could at least request. You know, you're not mandated to carry the card. You don't have to have a red mark on your forehead to identify. But people should maybe have the option that if they wanted to carry the card, it would at least be something that is consistent across the state, so that every police agency would be aware. Maybe every hospital would be aware. It can work for you and against you. But those were the two thoughts that have come to my mind.
Yes, I would like to add to that. I know two things. I work part-time in Dearborn, and so I know for my health. And I know that in Dearborn, they have, the police department have a registry. So people and like family members would have a child or a person with a disability can register, through their database. And so when the police comes or when an ambulance comes, they automatically know that there's somebody with a disability in there. So like some form of registry that people can sign up in, that could be one possible way. But I just wanted to quickly bring up a case that just recently happened, and I'm sure Miss, Judge Thomas, and I know Attorney Robin and Lauren probably already know about this case, but there was recently a young girl named Grace that was 15 years old, and she was had some prior issues, with her mother, and so her mother called the police, and then she, got a case or whatever, but she was doing fine, but they put her, she was like probation, and so so what they did was, during COVID, she didn't want to do her homework, or she could, she wasn't really wanting to be able to do her homework, wasn't able to, because she has ADD, it has an IEP as well. So it's like really hard, like most students, during that time of COVID. And so the judge said, well, she violated her probation, because she was already troubled, with the law. And so they put her in jail. So a whole bunch of, advocates came out and such. And so, with the, the case of Grace, that really gives a great example of when race and disability and, and being a young person and how it intertwines and affects many, young people's lives. I know statistically, children of color, Black and brown children with disabilities get more put into the prison, school to prison pipeline, and they're at higher risk. And so it happens not just with Grace, but across the country. But because of the big turnout and people protesting to help get Grace out, the judge the Supreme Court, the higher up judges decided to drop her case, well, decided to let her out. So she got out of juvenile detention, and then the judge that presided over the case dropped the case. But I feel like if it wasn't for people, speaking out against it, she'd probably still be there today. So this is not just like with Grace, but it's happening across the country, everywhere. And so I also recommend, I love to see these discussions because us as people with disabilities have to know these cases and have to speak out as well. Because I see the most people that speaking out are not people in the disability community, and it's not people with disability organizations that's coming into defense of children that's like this. So we need to be more on top of it and really, try to dismantle what's being done to our children across the country.
Yeah, if you go to my website, Robin Legal, we actually interviewed one of Grace's attorneys, and one of my colleagues, Angelique Strong Marks, who's with the National Bar, she was instrumental in leading some of the protests that were out there at the courts. And we Black women lawyers, I'm the vice president, we put awareness out there about what was happening with Grace. And to me, it was just shocking because the work I've done at the juvenile court in Wayne County, and we have a specialized program where they wouldn't, if you don't do your homework, they would assess what is the issue. That you wouldn't get locked up for not doing your homework. You would have had to catch a new case. It had to be like a severe situation. And then especially with COVID and the governor's order. So I was really surprised that the judge did that. I know that they said she tried to justify and say there were some other reasons, especially in light of the fact that there was a young man in Kalamazoo that was in residential that was killed, and they had that lawsuit pending about that case. So I was just shocked. But I agree with you, Tamika, that if you see an injustice, we're stronger together than individually. We do have to come together and say something. It's just strategically figuring out what is the best way. Sometimes it may be showing up in court. I mean, now you may not be able to physically show up, but show up via Zoom or write an article about it or put something on social media. If you don't bring attention to some of the mistreatment, because I'm seeing it on a regular basis in the system of people, if you don't bring attention to it, if you don't shine the spotlight on some of those prosecutors, some of those judges, and some of the attorneys that aren't doing their job, then they're going to just keep doing what they're doing, and people with disabilities, their rights are going to be violated, and that's an abomination. That's just wrong.
Marguerite has had her hand up for a long time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Speak up.
Me, Marguerite, and Scarlett is my sister, and I agree with Judge Thomas, Attorney Robin, and Tamika. But this has been an issue for me as a person who will be 65 in November. And I am proud to say my age. And I need to educate the public about people who use service animals under the age of 6 dogs and monkey horses. That's it. Sometimes people of the public do not understand the difference between the emotional support animals and the legit service dogs. And for me, in the past, I had to deal with the Detroit Police Department because they did not understand the difference. So, in fact, I wrote, what about is people with disabilities that are speech impairment and along with hearing impairment issues. And sometimes the law enforcement may not get trained with those too. And because I am out in the public eye, I go to city council meetings, even on Zoom. To let my voice be heard. because my late grandmother told me, speak up when you see something that's not right. Do not be silent. So I will speak up no matter what. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, and last week, DDOT have another issue that I just put it in black and white. And what DDOT doing now is making everybody go in the back door, even people with walkers. And I refuse to do that. And last Wednesday, I went to Royal Oak. I found out that the smart bus had a shield, a plastic glass shield that they could put in and put out to protect themselves because of COVID-19. And because the bus drivers have been threatened too. So why you did not have the same smart bus when it comes to safety? And I am also about safety. When I see people that is parked in either crosswalk, parked illegally parking lot, especially in the blue lines, I would take a picture of it. And people they get mad at me for taking pictures of their vehicles. I said, so what? You are parked illegally. So thank you for the time. And I finally got Michigan celebration Zoom call. Thank you.
Thank
Okay, I
you.
Thank
would-
you, Marguerite. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
text you later, Marguerite, about that bus issue because that's come up before as how people with disabilities are accessing transportation. Like I was saying, that nothing should change for people with disabilities because of COVID or anything else. They can make accommodations for the bus driver. They can make accommodations for the passengers. They make accommodation for people with disabilities. So, you know, this is all this COVID and coronavirus is new, but we still have to we'll have to make accommodations, you know. We have
Right.
to
Shay?
figure it out, you know, and it's up to the earners, to the DPS and the smart to figure it out, you know, how we can make it equitable for everyone to ride the bus. You know, just because you have a disability doesn't mean you can't ride the bus. You got to be safe just like everybody else.
Okay.
But
We've got some comments we need to get to.
okay, go ahead.
Off topic here, going off topic. Shay, you have a comment. You want to read it? You want me to read it? I think it's important that people hear it.
Well, it was basically just telling an experience that my brother had. He is currently 31 and is a brain tumor survivor. And he has been working at a grocery store for about 16 years, and everybody in the neighborhood basically knows who Ben is. You know, everybody kind of sees him. He's thought to be like one of the best workers there. And he likes to go to work early a lot since he just starts thinking about his next shift. He's like, that's all he fixates on. So sometimes he'll walk to work at like 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning. And he will wear a hoodie and like baggy pants, and he can look kind of suspicious just walking around in the morning like that. But he also has hearing problems and a lot of different cognitive problems. And so one time the police stopped him and he had no idea what was happening. He couldn't hear, and they told him to put his hands up. They told him to like, but he wasn't doing anything. He didn't know what was happening. All he saw was lights and all these like cops and everything. And so he was just kind of very scared, and they ended up like taking him in. Luckily he wasn't like injured at all or nothing like bad happened, but they ended up like taking him to the station, and luckily he knows my mom's phone number, so he was able to make that call and we were able to come get him. But now he is registered, and like they have a picture of his face, all the police department, so they know who Ben is, and they know like that he has what his disabilities are and that he has hearing impairments. So, and he's still been stopped like 2 other times since then, but it went a lot more smoothly, and so that's good.
Right. I definitely think there's a need for more training in the police academies for dealing with people who have disabilities and mental health issues. We especially pressed that issue in Ann Arbor after they killed Aura Rosser. She was a Black woman. She was 40. She was having some mental health breakdown. Her boyfriend called the police. They said she pulled out a fish knife and they shot her in the head and killed her. And so Ann Arbor, they said that they've gotten, I did a program. That's when I did one of my first What to Do When Stopped by the Police programs. And my mom, Nurse Pam, was there and she was on them. Nurse Pam don't play around. And she was on them about making sure that they get training. And that's why we need the passage of the George Floyd legislation. The training needs to be nationwide. So you have to have in every field, we need to have people with more compassion, compassionate police officers, because I've seen some officers that are they shouldn't be police officers. If you're going to be rude and mean and nasty, and especially with somebody who has a disability, who doesn't understand what's going on, then you don't need to be in that job. You need to go somewhere else,
And that brings me back again to, do we need some type of identifier? The dog tags that to wear around your neck on a chain. Do we need more training for our community in the schools? Just like Robin and I have gone into schools and made presentations to the young people on what to do if you have police contact. Maybe we need to put together a program that is specific to the disabilities community.
Yes, yes.
So that it's you can't always trust other folks to do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Well, I think that when you're talking about an identifier, there's 2 things that come to mind. Number one, the stigma that may come out of being identified.
Judge Thomas, you muted yourself, so we can't hear you.
Our community, learning some techniques. Maybe that's something we need to work on.
Can you hear me?
Is that?
Yes, we can hear you. Who's speaking?
Michael Shaw, Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network. And a second thing, if you start identifying people, there are certain organizations that will start taking that information and you don't know what they're going to do with it. And those are 2 things that come to mind.
Which is why I have indicated, I know at one time, the state of Michigan had identification cards that you could ask for. They weren't mandatory, but it was something that was available to you if you wanted it. And yes, there's going to be pros and cons to both sides. And it's a matter of weighing them, voluntarily using it if it's available. There's no quick, easy, all-encompassing answer for anything. But it's, like I said, I don't have all the answers, but I have wondered about some of the possibilities.
Right, and I definitely think if you do like when I do the videos and, I brought Judge Thomas in to give tips on what to do when stopped by the police, I think you take the tips and then you kind of have to look at each specific situation. I mean, I've been stopped myself by the police and I've had to take some deep breaths, maybe do a prayer. I had to don't make any sudden moves. You just have to, you kind of have to hope that you get a decent officer, but if you get a rude one, don't get into an argument with them. I know my rights. What we talk about is comply now, complain later. We want you to live. We want you to live to hear your story, as opposed to not. I mean, and I know some situations people didn't do anything wrong and they still were shot and killed, but there are some situations where if you do comply and you're respectful, that doesn't mean giving a statement. I didn't say that. Don't give a statement, okay? Don't just be giving a statement. But I mean, there's some things that you can do that can mitigate. You can kind of if you calm yourself down, respectful to the officer, they'll be respectful. I've had to do that with situations, you know, all kinds of different situations. You slow yourself down, you calm, you respectfully, officer, and you know, I'm expressing my rights. I've been advised by a lawyer not to give a statement. Here's my name, give a real name, things like that. And no sudden moves, no running, because that's the thing, you know, and a lot of folks want to run because they're scared, but unless you're a track star, they're going to catch you, and if they catch you and they had to run and they overweight and they're going to be mad at you and they might jack you up. And so this just, you know, it's just some common sense things, you know?
Well, I think that
and then, like, to have a card. I mean, at one time I would help distribute cards that were produced by the NAACP. And the part of the instructions were, if you were stopped by the police, just give them the card. Right. So if you're a member of the disabilities community and you're stopped by the police, maybe all you do is give them the card. That doesn't require you to register with any group. It doesn't require you to wear anything that's readily identifiable. But if the card is produced by or published by, or that may be something that we can use and to teach members of our community that you know, the red flashing lights, you know, it's either the fireman or the policeman. Either way, you pull over, okay? And then when they come to you, hand them the card. You know, that's easy steps. This is the sign. See the sign, pull over, have contact, give card. Not real complicated, but it's something we can do that may help our community.
I have a question. So if we were to advocate for having people have a card, should we write our senator and legislator, our House person, or how shall we approach advocating for that?
I think the card should be voluntary.
All of it should be voluntary.
Voluntary. And, you know, you choose to carry this card because they might get some HIPAA, you know, issues.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if the card is going to be legitimate.
Who should issue the card? Oh.
Yeah, if it came from the state, like Judge Thomas said, there used to be cards issued by the state. Or you said NAACP, did you say?
Well, there were two. Back in my younger years, when I was looking for employment and not always given an opportunity, I was given a card by the state of Michigan identifying me as a member of the disabilities community and identifying for future employers that if they were kind enough to give me a chance, that the state of Michigan provided additional coverage for workers' comp, back, heart, things of that nature. And you were given this card, and the employer you could give the card to the employer, and the employer said, oh, okay, I might take a chance on you. Then there's the other situation where with the African American community, the NAACP and different branches across the country created a card articulating different things that a person who is being stopped by the police should know or do or not do. And the card could fit in your wallet. And if you were stopped by the police, the instructions were to either read the card, memorize the card, show the policeman the card. Now that was produced by the NAACP, which is a largely recognized peaceful civil rights organization. So if we were decided that we wanted to do a card, I think that it should come from an organization that is recognized for its peaceful advocacy. So that when the card was presented and the officer looked at it, they, you know, oh, I recognize that symbol. You know, okay, that's the sign for the Red Cross. Something along that nature. Either way, it was voluntary. Nobody's making anybody carry a card, wear a bracelet, an ID tag. It was all voluntary.
So
right, the ACLU, so the ACLU actually has, you know, I have some of the NAACP cards too, but the ACLU has a card. They give tips on what to do when stopped by the police. Our sheriff in Washtenaw County, we have our African-American sheriff, Jerry Clayton. When I called him about putting together a program on what to do when stopped by the police, he has a card. So it might be a matter of having a national disability group put together a card. I know for immigration, if you can Google, there's a red immigration card that they give to people who are dealing with the police, and they can print it up, put it in their wallet. So maybe it's a matter of a national disability group putting together a card. I mean, if you go to my website, I do put on, I have PowerPoint, so I do go through there and I specifically go through each scenario. And when you're stopped at, you know, when they come to your door, the car, the house, in the school, and I have a PowerPoint in there. So that might be something, I don't know, I might, because it keeps coming up. And I did watch, there was a video that they did on BBC where they showed disproportionate number of people with disabilities being stopped and harassed and brutalized by the police. So yeah, I definitely think it would be beneficial. I hear what you're saying. The young man, Mr. Shea, was saying you don't want to be labeled, because if there's some hater or Nazi cops out there that they're going to come after you. Okay, fine. But I think what Judge Thomas is saying is if you do have like a simple card that just says I have a disability, it doesn't have to say who you are. Like, I have a disability. I don't mean to be rude or disrespect or come across that way. I have a disability. I have rights. And I want to express these rights. I don't want to disrespect you as a police officer, but I've got some disabilities and I may not be able to understand exactly everything that you're asking me to do. You know?
Yeah, our United States, they have a program. I can call them and see if they have cards available or if they're doing something in that nature, because this is ARC is a national advocacy organization, and this, you know, this issue comes across all over the country. I was talking to a lady down here yesterday, I don't know if she's here today, and she mentioned how the ARC of the United States was doing something on another issue. Maybe it was this issue, but I've been on a call where they did the same thing with nationally with people with disabilities and getting in contact with the law. And they have a national program. I don't know if they have a card, but we had calls from Oregon, DC, Illinois, Oklahoma, you know, and so this is a national issue with people with disabilities. I think what happens is with people with disabilities, it can be misconstrued as being non-compliant. If I'm hearing impaired and the officer says something, he doesn't know I'm hearing impaired. So he's pissed off now because I'm ignoring him, or I'm not recognizing his authority. So he's pissed off now, so he can bust me upside my head or do something. But I just can't hear. And he doesn't know that. I don't look like I can't hear, or I might be visually impaired, or like the person earlier said, the guy who was standing on a bus stop had cerebral palsy. Approached by police, they thought he was drunk. Didn't have, you know, so that's the issue. You gotta remember, the police officers, they're from the general population, general public. They might not have any contact with people with disabilities. Even they might have limited contact with people with disabilities. Or you might have a particular cop who never had any contact with people with disabilities. I'll give you an example, the guy in Inkster. The police officer in Inkster who hit the guy, the autistic guy in the head and messed up his eye, I was shocked. If somebody told me what happened, this happened in Michigan, Westland Police, it was happening in Westland. Westland Police was the last police officers in the state I would guess that this happened in. Why? Because Westland Police plays my Special Olympic basketball team every year, you know, as a fundraiser. So Westland Police, I was shocked, Westland. But the guy in Westland who hit the guy in the head, was new from a different, he was fired from a different police department. So he wasn't one of the guys. And what they don't tell you in the tape, the Westland police officer that was there with him was telling him to stop. So they don't tell you that, and because, like I said, with everything I play the whole tape. But that's the issue, because general population don't know you're hearing impaired or speaking impaired or have a mental illness. You know, it's not visibly noticeable, so they don't know. So that's why, and it gets misconstrued as non-compliant or being and they get angry. Like you said, just time when you chase somebody, they mad now when they catch you. But well, they mad now because you're disrespecting them. So if you just hand them the card, they know, that you're hearing impaired or that you whatever, and that might,
And also, if we had a card, it might have a line on it where you could provide a contact person and a number.
Right. Yeah.
They have interpreters for different language. People who only speak Spanish or only speak Vietnamese or whatever, they get interpreters. It can be handled the kind of the same way or viewed the kind of the same way. Okay, I may need an interpreter. And this is my interpreter.
I'm a parent.
Yeah, I mean, what we could do is, if I could see if there's something on the internet already, and maybe we can have some folks look at it, some lawyers, some judges, Judge Thomas, and tweak it, and then and share it with everybody, to just make sure that that rights are protected. Because for me, even as a lawyer dealing with the general population, they don't always understand when they're dealing with the police. Like when the police put the handcuffs on you and you pull away, and then you get charged with resisting obstructing. And I'm like, people in the general population don't even know that you can get a criminal charge, a felony, and everything for that. And I think that's wrong. That's why I feel like it should be a civil infraction. That's me, but you can hear about more of that on my video. I'll talk about that. But no, we need the compassionate police. I mean, I understand you want the police, if somebody is victimizing you, obviously you want the police to come and do their job, and they have a hard job, but you also want them to have a level of compassion. I'm tired of seeing, I'm sure we're all tired of seeing these videos of people being brutalized by the police. And then when you hear that as a person with a disability, to me, it's like, it's even an added, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe. And then when it's like the family called for the help, and then they called in the people that ended up killing their relative. And I'm like, that's atrocious. That's the
issue that I want to address. I'm the parent of a child who has on occasion been violent. Mm-hmm. And the police have become aware of it. I know how to handle it. And I tell them to stay away, that if they come close to him and they yell at him, he's going to get more aggressive towards me. So if they want him to stop, they need to not come towards me, and they need me to handle it. They don't let me handle it. And I don't know how to deal with it. It's happened repeatedly. They make it worse. So the last thing I am ever going to do if I need help with my son is call the police.
Right.
See, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, unless somebody is killing you, I don't always call the police. That's the last minute, that's something my mama said.
Killing me. That's the problem. I have a son who has who's got dissociative identity disorder, and he has other identities, and he has one identity who actually threatens to kill me. I need the police in those situations.
Or if you have do you have like a psychiatrist or a mental health professional that can help you kind of de-escalate him, get him to calm down?
Yes, but
that's why I was advocating for the mental health van. See what happens when that situation. My brother was schizophrenic, and he was killed by police officer in 1991. Before all this, a month before Rodney King, but before that, we would have to. My brother was 6'3" and 300 pounds. So my parents and my grandmother would call the police. But the first thing my grandma or somebody would say that we have no guns in the house. So, because they didn't want him to get shot. In Susan's case, in my case, and other people, family members who have people with disabilities that go through that, that's why the mental health ban. Because when you call police, it's not a crime scene. It's not a mental health crisis, but a crime scene. They know nothing but crime, how to deal with crime. But see, what Tavi's going through and my brother's going through is a mental health crisis. So they would need a mental health team to come out to the house and get the person, get on the van and go to the crisis center to get stabilized. But we don't have that. They have it in Oregon, but we don't have it in Michigan. I can't think of the program.
We don't have a mental health system.
Lauren, you're not listening.
What?
If it happens at home, I don't call the police.
All right.
But it happens in public. He gets under stress. He gets overwhelmed. I take him someplace and I don't know that there's going to be something going on that's going to overwhelm him, and he loses control. We were at Eastern Market and he lost control. We had a swarm of police officers around him, which made it worse. And I told them, stay away. Right now, he's got to calm down. You need to back off. They didn't. They tried to restrain him. Trying to restrain him made him that much worse. And he, has superhuman strength that comes from somewhere when he gets stressed out like this. And so they said, well, he's dangerous. And I said, no, he's not dangerous. I just need to keep saying, I love you over and over again, and he will calm down. But if you keep coming towards him, he's going to get worse. They wouldn't listen.
See, that's why I'm saying the mental health ban would.
It was a year and a half. And I don't know what to do when that happens. I don't know whether I need a card that says that I can throw at them and say, leave us alone.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, a card. I don't think a card is going to be enough. I'm almost like, if you know he's like that, have a support person that comes with you to help if he gets agitated.
That's overly burdensome. This is where, if I may, and I hate the term. I really hate the term because I think it's caused more harm than good. But under the theory of defund the police, when that concept began, it was not to eliminate the police department throughout the country. It was about using funds directed currently under the police budget for other resources that can be used to help the community that is confronted with problems that are not criminally based.
Right.
And that's where they talk about take some of the funding that is currently on the line for policing and say, put it into community mental health. Right. Community mental health, which includes, if you get a phone call because someone is at the Eastern Market and a loved one is having a crisis, instead of sending 10 police cars, maybe we send one police car and a van that has with it people who are trained and de-escalating, people who are trained in mental health. Because the question becomes, okay, are we competing for funding? Well, the purse is not endless. So in some sense, we are competing for funding. But by the same token, it makes for a safer community, which is what policing is supposed to be about, safer communities. And so to divert some of the funding to other forms of community peaceful efforts. And that's what is needed in your situation, Susan. But when people use that terminology, defund the police, it's gotten so skewed that people hear everything that they want to hear and nothing that each other wants to portray to them. But that's basically the bottom line, is that we need to advocate for support groups. My son worked in mental health, and the gentleman that was killed in New York, where they put the bag over his head and they said, okay, my son said that that is not how we would have handled it. All right, because we have been trained in mental health to how to de-escalate and how
Right.
to, okay, they're handling it as police officers.
Right.
They're not handling it as mental health professionals.
It's a crime scene.
Exactly. So if we had, when you call the police and you say this is what it is, or the police show up and you say this is what it is, if they had some place they could call where they had a support team that could get out there as fast as the police and the fire department, that were mental health specialists, and understood and were able to listen to Susan, his mother, who has dealt with this for years, okay, and be supportive of her and her efforts, it would be more stabilizing for the entire community.
Right,
Yeah.
and I would say when we say defund the police, it's actually demilitarize the police.
Right.
And then when people are asking, how can we get our local politicians involved? I mean, this is the first time I've heard about what Lauren referenced in Oregon. So that's where you can reach out to your local state rep, state senator, congressperson. I know my congresswoman is Debbie Dingell. I'm gonna reach out to her. I'm gonna find out more about Oregon and say, we need to have more of what Oregon has. We need to have a crisis instead of having it every time, you know, a family member has a crisis. You got to debate, do I want to call the police? Because if I call the police, well, who's going to come? Is there going to be somebody that's going to come that's trigger happy? Or is there going to be somebody that comes that's compassionate? You don't know who you're going to get. So it's like you got to roll the dice.
Yeah, there was a talk about that with Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network some years ago about having this mental health van to go out. In your case, Susan, that would come out into instead of the police. Because I used to that same mental health work, I used to work in a psych unit, and we had to de-escalate the person before we put them in seclusion. So it's easier to de-escalate the person instead of grabbing them, tying them down, holding them down, having a nurse give them a shot, and put them in seclusion.
Well, it's my understanding. This is Mike
learn
Shaw
how to
from
do that.
Detroit. This is Mike Shaw from Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network. It's my understanding that we are now going along with the police. That people from our organization are going along with the police and working to de-escalate those type of conflicts.
Okay. So how do they get in touch with that program?
Well, you can call over to our telephone number. It's 313-344-9099 and ask for customer service.
Okay.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the courthouse is closed.
I like that.
I think they would like for me to get out of it since I was supposed to have been gone about 4 hours ago. So I've enjoyed participating in the conference. I am available where I can be helpful to maybe do some follow-up on some of these ideas. Please stay in touch. I am an advocate, so I will advocate.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank
Be
you.
safe. Be
Bye-bye.
safe.
I do my best. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and everyone, I actually have to go too because I got a class. I got some children that I'm teaching, and I got to get on. I teach a class at EMU on law and the African American experience. I'm actually going to be reaching out to Judge Thomas about having her come speak to my class. So thank you guys for having me. And my contact information is in the I put it in the chat. And keep doing what you guys do. Keep doing what you do, and knowledge is power. That's what I always see. You watch my videos. They're free videos. Knowledge is power. So thank you all, and you guys have a blessed day, okay?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Well, I thank everyone for coming.
Welcome to stay on if they want to continue to talk.
Okay. Okay.
I'm wondering
Mr.
if
Shaw, are you
Thank
still there?
you.
You have to stay, Lauren.
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, I just want to talk to Mr. Shaw for a second, and if that van is available, a lot of people don't know about it.
It's not a van. What they have is a program in which people from our agency and from the mental health venue are going out with the police, and when they get those type of calls that are concerning people who are having mental breakdowns, those particular police and person from our authority are going out to de-escalate the situation.
Okay.
And actually,
Okay.
Mr. Brooks, I believe he spoke about that last night on TV on Channel 7 at 6 o'clock.
Okay, I think I saw a commercial. I remember they was talking about it a lot back in the day, and that would be extremely helpful because a lot of times, like when with Susan, you know, see what happens is, in my case with my brother and with Susan, this happens maybe once or twice a year. So, or it happens with other families once or twice a year. And the issue is always with me, when the police show up, it's now a crime scene. They're not listening, because it's my scene, it's a crime scene, I'm a police officer. They're not listening to the parent, they're not listening to nobody, but they're just dealing with a crime scene.
Yeah, I think that the fact that we're even having these type of conversations indicates that there's a real problem in this nation.
Yeah, huge.
Police. That
Yeah,
people are fearing the police. And that I don't believe this is something that is endemic in every nation of the world. I think this is something that happens in some nations, and it happens in our country, and it's a real problem.
Yeah, because I think you know, the United States has the largest incarceration rate of any country in the world, and our police is like a military. They're like paramilitary professionals. That's what they call them. But it's like, yeah, as I'm saying, that's what they're trained. They're trained to handle crime scenes, and it's hard to untrain that. So if you call the police or police show up, see, a lot of times what happens is somebody else calls the police, not the family member. And when someone else calls the police, you know, it's a whole different story then. But yeah, but
actually is that it's somebody else that calls the police. I actually under control and I know exactly what to do. And if people would just give me the space to get him under control, I can do that. It just takes a little bit of time, and it looks pretty scary to watch, but I know what to do. You know, I have medication that I can give him if I need to, but I don't want to. You know, I would rather try to get him under control, just
yeah. But see, like in your case, Susan, a lot of people called the police when they saw that happening. And when that happened, it's a crime scene. So that's our biggest hurdle.
This is Marguerite and Scarlett. And a member of my family had mental issues also, but he passed about 2 or 3 years ago, and during the late 80s to 95, my grandmother, who
don't do that.
Who tried to tell the cop that he had mental issues and he was legally blind. And instead of her intervening, try to tell them to let her talk to him, and they kept saying no. we didn't know how to handle him. So I said, please let me talk to him. And the officer said, no, just stand back. And then when my brother heard my voice, she calmed down. After hearing my voice, he calmed down. And so, so after he calmed down, they put the handcuffs on him behind that, and they also put handcuffs on his feet. And I said, please do not put the handcuffs on his feet, because he is diabetic. So after all that, they picked him up. He was 5'7", 195 pounds. So they picked him up and put him in the back seat of his car. And he said up against the inside door frame and knocked him out cold. They got the EMS. The EMS came and took him to the Detroit Receiving Hospital. So that was it. So that's when we found out that he also had schizophrenia. So that issue was ongoing. So that is when I started doing my research on my own about people with mental illness and diabetic, people with disabilities, with mental illness. So when when people ask me why don't I get a degree in psychology or psychiatrist, I said no, because I need to know the basics. And I can see trouble before it happened. And don't ask me why. But that is God's gift to me, because I can recognize different situations, and some people may or may not want to call on me, but that is okay. And for me to get more knowledge, now I will do my research. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marguerite. Gabe, I wonder if you wanted to say anything.
I'm having some significant internet connectivity issues. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reach out to Marguerite one-on-one, to address some of those issues. I appreciate, the opportunity to do so. Like I said, I'm having some internet connectivity issues. And so
Okay.
if there are some pieces, important pieces to this that I missed, I do apologize. Did somebody want to quickly interpret that last segment?
The last section, can somebody do that better than I?
I think Marguerite was just expressing a situation that happened with, I believe it was a brother.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was suffering. He suffered from mental illness and diabetes, and the cops came. The cops were called in, and they came and treated him pretty roughly and handcuffed his hands and feet, and basically tossed him in the back of the car where he hit his head. And I'm thinking maybe that was actually a blessing, because then he went to a hospital rather than to the police station. And then Marguerite started doing her research on, what are all these different kinds of issues, and the conclusions, we're all still debating, right?
Right.
So I want to know how Lauren got so young and handsome just by a little snap of the fingers over there.
I was introduced earlier. This is Councilman Gabe Leland, District 7, representing the West Side. I also chair the Disability Task Force. And as I mentioned yesterday, as soon as we have a date for our next meeting, I will communicate that to you all as soon as possible. Clearly we're having a national debate right now about the use of force. A lot of it stems from the training. And I've always advocated for, mental health training. Obviously, what we saw out of the unfortunate situation with the Floyd case was, there are still police departments throughout this country that are using, different ways of the use of force that is deadly. And it's quite honestly shocking that, various police departments are still allowed to use these types of tactics. And so, there's the Detroit Will Breathe coalition that is working with council on a number of recommendations. What I would strongly recommend, and because see what ends up happening during these conversations, because of the passion that's involved in this national conversation, a lot of the times the ways in which the police department have exhibited the use of force in very inappropriate ways, those we need to make our voices clear at the Board of Police Commissioners meetings, and we also and I have no problem inviting those individuals as guests, but they need to be a part of this conversation. And so oftentimes, because I sit on city council, because I'm active in this area, I'm sort of brought into the conversation to say, hey, what can be done with this? We also have to recognize that we have now a fully empowered police commission, and they need to be at the table, and they need to hear these stories, okay? And in our recommendations, both our stories and our comments and our recommendations, they need to hear those as well. And so while I appreciate, some of the feedback and some of your stories, I do. We need the Board of Police Commissioners at the table every opportunity that we can. Of course, we're not gonna get them, unless we ask for it. And so let me take this opportunity to address another issue which I was going to raise earlier, and that is, and this might be to you, Lauren, or to anybody else for that matter. If there's a training that we can do for the advocacy community, I'd be happy to participate in that, and that would be to simply, how do you contact your legislator, right? So there was a comment that was made earlier in the segment, and again, I was having some I'm kind of balancing three different meetings right now, and I also have some internet connectivity issues. But the nice young woman, I believe she was an attorney, she also stated that she was teaching a class over at Eastern Michigan.
Robin, yep.
Before she left, before she signed off the call, she made a comment that I thought was interesting. She said, after having listened to this conversation, I'm going to go talk to my Congresswoman Dingell. And I thought to myself, that's quite a difficult task. And this is no, this is no smack on our beloved Congresswoman, because I adore her. But it's not that easy to get to a Congresswoman. It's not that easy to get to a legislator. And, she was very ecstatic about that. She said, well, I listened to the conversation, and now I'm going to go talk to my Congresswoman. In reality, that just doesn't happen. And so what does happen is an email is sent, a legislative aide answers a phone call. Maybe the message eventually gets addressed and gets sent to the elected official, but not in all cases. And so, you know, in our society, I feel like in our generation, you know, people get really excited about something. You know, there's a lot of different things that we want to talk to our legislators about. And a phone call does not get returned. And, you know, then we move on to something else. And so I guess what I'm saying, you know, to Lauren and anybody else, you know, if there's an opportunity where we could do just a very small training or to facilitate a conversation about how do you communicate, you know, certain subjects or issues to elected officials to get the results that you want, I would be happy to be a part of that, because I know what it's like to sit in the chair. I was a former state representative, you know, of course, now honored to be on the city council. But, you know, I just had to bring that up because, you know, I was just excited as that other woman was, you know, and I'm not trying to stop anybody here to go and to talk to their legislator. But I just wanted to, you know, just bring that issue to, you know, to the conversation about her, you know, when she said, I'm going to go talk to my congresswoman. I mean, I love Congresswoman Dingell, but she's not the easiest person to get to. And so we can figure this out, you know, in an appropriate manner. I think that'd be a great thing.
I'll give you a couple examples that what I found out that happens, that we get our message across. One is the Disability Caucus that Judge Thomas was instrumental in starting some years ago. I noticed at the convention, Dingell, everybody who's a congressperson, running for Congress, senator, we had Senator Gary Peters, we had David Dingell, we had whoever speaking at our Stabenow.
Yeah.
I even got pictures of them speaking and answering our questions.
Are you talking about the Democratic convention in Michigan?
Yes, the Disability Caucus.
They're more accessible there because they're just walking around.
Yeah, but at the Disability Caucus, the more people I have in the room with disabilities, I have a line of them waiting to talk to us.
Lauren,
go ahead.
We got to be very careful about what we're talking about here. That's a hyper partisan comment that you're making. That if there's somebody that wants to contact their congressperson and they're not a Democrat, you can't expect them to walk into a Democratic caucus meeting and just start asking their congressperson that question. What you're talking about a very hyper partisan caucus meeting that's put on by the Democratic Party. If you're a Republican constituent and you don't feel comfortable addressing a congressperson at a Democratic caucus, you know, statewide convention, there should be other avenues to be able to do that. So we just got to be careful what we're talking about here, because what you're referencing is a very hyper, you know, partisan type of meeting.
Well, unfortunately, that's the climate we live in, you know.
Well, but maybe that's part of what we need to change.
Yeah.
Because these people are elected to represent us. How can they represent us if they don't know us?
Right, and Gabe is offering to help us learn how to communicate with these folks better.
Well, see, we have, okay, another thing I was going to say, we have with DDI, Development Disabilities Institute of Michigan, we have a march. In March, we have we call it Legislative Day, that our and a couple of other advocacy groups, we get together and we make arrangements for our people, for someone to go meet their Congress, or their state representative, or their state senator. Now that's nonpartisan. Whoever your state representative, whoever your state senator, Democrat or Republican, this is all over the state of Michigan. The group DDI or the ARC or whatever ARC or whoever makes arrangements for that state rep to meet on that day in a room in their office or their little conference room or in a bigger conference room, you know, intimately with a group of constituents. And that's what we do every month. That's DDI and a couple of other groups. Like I was saying, well, where I live in Detroit is hyper partisan, and that's what we get. Also, me personally, how I do it, I'd rather them come from me, and Gabe, I hate to say this in front of you, but politics is like two things: people and money. I ain't got no money, but I can give them some people. So I'm a precinct delegate, and the more votes I get as a precinct delegate, the more attention I get. Or being a precinct delegate, they come knocking on my door wanting my vote because they know I'm going to vote in the primaries. They got to go vote for myself. So that's I encourage people to get involved in the process because like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I'm an old guy, and one of my closest friends, very close friends, a fraternity brother, Clyde Cleveland. I used to complain about that. Politicians only want money. Politicians only want money. He told me politicians, him being a politician, he said money, dollars don't vote, people do. And they listen to people who vote. And that's just the way it is. That's what he told me. But
Gabe,
yeah.
can I assume that what you're offering is a nonpartisan, non-Michigan sort of event where you're just teaching people in general how they could contact their elected officials?
Now, Gabe,
absolutely.
we have that on the state level. Gabe can do it on the state level.
No, Gabe just offered a training. I'm wondering if right
Sounds
here
like-
is an appropriate spot.
You mean via Zoom?
Thank you.
Yeah, a Zoom meeting, and then
Okay.
I think it would be a great session for this next go-round, I Love You stuff, Susan.
Yes.
To have Gabe come and just talk to everybody about the best ways to communicate to your legislators.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be helpful. I think that would be helpful for really anybody, because the same way that you approach somebody about a disability issue, you know, I mean, these things are universal in terms of just how to talk to people and how to be consistent, you know, and like Lauren said, I mean, it's the squeaky wheel gets the oil. I mean, that's the name of the game. And you know, but we also are very we're stronger when we work together. And so when they hear, you know, additional voices coming through and where everyone's staying on message, I mean, you know, this could, I mean, there's benefit obviously with understanding how to communicate with your elected official, and that's spread through all, you know, through all levels of government. But then also, you know, how do you communicate the same issue with the news, with you know, with the media, with, you know, to be consistent and staying on message and you know, sending, you know, 15 letters to the editor, you know, spread throughout Metro Detroit, different, you know, dailies. I mean, you know, that's powerful too. And so that should be a part, you know, possibly a part of the conversation.
That would be great. Gabe, I just wanted to mention to you something that has been bothering me through this whole conversation today. And since we have you tied up here with us, I'll take the opportunity. So I'm upper middle class white guy from the suburbs, right? I've never had a police officer tell me to be compliant, ever. And I've worked and lived and do an awful lot of stuff in the city with an awful lot of people with disabilities, people that are artists, people that are fringe types, and they get shit all the time. And it's a matter of respect for human dignity that the police do not show people that don't look appropriate to them. And I think that's really where the problem lies. Somebody that looks different, looks odd, they're a problem to be controlled, not somebody to respect and talk to. And I've never had that happen to me, but I've seen it happen to many people around me.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I'm the guy on the other side of the spectrum. It happened to me a few times. The insult with me is that I don't think I look like a thug, but might be treated as one.
Yeah, right.
I just think they just can't tell the difference. Like I was saying, they can't tell a kid coming home from Hampton University with 3.8 grade point average from the guy who's about to rob a liquor store in the street. They can't tell They just can't. They just say an African American male. They just can't. They can't tell the difference. He can have Hampton University on his shirt. They still can't tell the difference. Oh, I have to run.
So just quickly, this is Gary. I would just like to say that this the only thing that brought all these issues to light are the cameras that we have on our phones.
Right.
I mean, this is very clear that this has been going on for all throughout history. And now we just have the technology that has been brought to bear. That we're able to use to capture some of this stuff. And, I don't have it. I don't have the answer, but what I can say is that the dialogue is important. The conversation is important. And, we have a unique set of race relations here in Detroit and in Michigan. What I can tell you is that I've been working for the last 15 years with our very own Detroit Police Department. They have really worked hard to advance police community relations in the neighborhoods that they serve. I can tell you, after doing some studying, maybe other than New York City, which has a policy where the police officer representing that specific neighborhood actually lives in that actual neighborhood. Aside from that, and I have done some research, the police community relations in this town is better than most places throughout this country, and it just needs to be improved. And how it gets improved is just by people coming together, having conversations. And I don't have every answer, but it takes work, and I'm committed to to the cause.
I appreciate that.
Go ahead, Margaret.
This is Marguerite and Scarlett. Speaking about profiling, in 2008 and 9, me and my sister Jello, who was a Black Lives Daily Mix, and we was walking into Somerset Mall, and people have never seen a black person. Wait.
Oh, it is Somerset Mall. Come on.
In the mall, just walking around, and the security guys kept following me, and I turned around. I said, "What is your problem?" And he said, "You." I said, "What is it?" He did not answer me. So I continued to walk and do window shopping. And he followed us inside this little boutique store. inside of Somerset Mall. So when I turned around, he was where my service dog is. I said, do not even try it. So I asked him, why? He said, you're not blind. I said, please look up the organization's name. Pause with a cause.org. He was in his mind that people should go are legally blind. And that is not the case anymore. So when I realized that he was just profiling me, so I said, okay, let me walk out of this mall. So we just took our time. I even got something to eat. He and his partner were right behind me. I said, okay, let me sit down and eat. They were still behind me. I said, this is ridiculous. So they looked it up and said, oops, sorry, ma'am. I said, it's too late now. The damage has been done. So my question is to you, Councilman Leland, how are people who are in the super police department and security guards, how are they going to be improved? And I've been trying to reach out to every city and person about educating police departments about the different laws and service dogs. I was pushed aside for no reason. So now is the time to educate police department about the ADA laws, service dogs.
Yeah, so this issue has come up before. And Thank you. This issue has come up before, and what I've said, previously, and I'll say it again. I'm happy to do some public service announcements. We have access to a number of cable networks, here at the city. We also need a policy statewide, citywide for awareness, right?
Mhm.
I'm not sure to what extent right now the city has the funding, but I'm willing to ask the question. I know we have to be very careful, just because this budget deficit due to COVID-19 has been it's really unprecedented. But I don't think it would take too many resources to go out and create some kind of a at least in maybe in the beginning, in a pilot way, for businesses to understand and know the law. A lot of that is within the ADA. So I want to say that the state should also get involved in training through maybe the Small Business Association of Michigan, or the Detroit Regional Chamber should step up, because I know they're a liaison at different points in time, and there are probably some other business type organizations that they recognize that this is the law, and so they should do everything in their power to educate other businesses, to make sure that those other businesses are staying compliant with what we have here, on the state and federal laws. And then the city should work in partnership with those business organizations and advocacy groups. So between that and doing some PSAs, definitely I'm willing to help you, Marguerite, because I think this is an important issue, right? I mean, service dogs, I don't know about you, but I've seen more out there than ever before, and they're not going away, and they shouldn't. And a society should know how to, not just accept service dogs, but should know there are certain ways in which you deal with them. Either coming into a business, or just walking down the street, because the first inclination that people have when they see a cute dog is go run over to it and pet it. But at the end of the day, that's not right, and that's harmful to the dog and to the person that needs the services from that animal. We can't always affect changing personal habits, but we can try. We can certainly try. So I'm certainly willing to do that.
Gabe, I know we want to let you go, but Marguerite brought up a couple of other interesting things that maybe you could shed a little light on. So, is the Detroit Police Department working regionally, the Metro Detroit area? Do they work together on these kinds of issues? Is there a regional body that we can address rather than trying to pick off each township's little police department? And then also, do the police interface at all with security guard types? I mean, because that's a whole nother lower level of abuse that a lot of people wind up going through.
Do you believe when Marguerite was speaking, she was asking about the cooperation regionally for specific to service dogs?
No, I think just in general about profiling and things like this. Yeah.
The police department both
Yeah,
Yeah,
because the incident she was talking about was at Somerset Mall, so,
right.
I don't know if people are even communicating regionally, the police departments and so on,
Yeah, I mean, I don't have those answers necessarily. I do know that there are best practices that the police departments try to abide by and come together. They unfortunately a lot of times they're a member like the Detroit is a member of 10 or 15 different police organizations, and
yeah,
a lot of times they come together for the purposes of showing power in numbers when they need to lobby for something in Lansing.
right.
But I believe they also come together to understand national best practices, like how to avoid, a situation like we had in Minnesota. So,
Right.
yes, I mean, I believe I do believe they come together, and it's probably both good and bad depending on what side, of the issue that you're on.
Right.
And then what was the other piece? And I'm sorry, I missed.
I didn't know if, well, you probably don't know this either. I don't know if there's any crossover between police and security guards. It's a lower level, obviously, and a lot of those guys are just hourly schlubs, but I don't know what kind of training they need or whatever, but they can be abusive too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. In fact, you all probably remember there was a security guard that was involved in a very unfortunate situation at Fairlane Mall where a young man died at the hands of a security guard, and I believe it was a choking incident. So and that happened.
Yes.
That happened. I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago. But anyway, I mean, yes, they do, because security guards at some point when they're addressing a situation that they cannot contain, there's other larger police departments that could be called in, and so there is a working relationship there. The biggest security organization I can think of is the one that Quicken utilizes, and they actually own their own. I mean, they're so big they actually own their own security force, and so they communicate often with local law enforcement at various points in time when they need to, and I believe there's organizations and programs where they go through very similarly to local police department for best practices and things of that nature. But I don't want to speak too much on an area that I'm not really responsible for. I can look into that for you. But as they say, that's a little bit above my pay grade.
But you're making it clear that we have lots of advocacy to do with lots of different groups.
Yeah, absolutely.